Welcome to Idaho History, the show that digs up the most thought-provoking stories from Idaho's history. Here are your hosts, Jeff Wade and Mark Iverson.
That's right, this is Idaho History, and I'm your host tonight, Jeff Wade. Actually, we're doing something a little different. Mark's not here. I have a much better-looking co-host tonight. That's my wife, Blair Wade. Hi, Blair.
Hi.
What's happening?
Not much. Just got done with trial for the first day.
Yeah, certain trial, right?
Certain trial, the state versus Lori Vallow.
So, Lori Vallow, can you give us... Actually, let me kind of tell our listeners why we're doing this. Mark and I, we do the history thing, but we're also, I guess, pretty well known for the true crime thing as well, right? Mm-hmm. So, I guess a case like this will definitely be history someday, and how we treat our criminals definitely says something about how society is at a certain point in time. So that's why I think it's important for us to have this conversation tonight, right? Mm-hmm. So, Blair, you decided to go to the courthouse today to see the opening statements in this case, right?
I did.
Why did you do that?
So this case is pretty emotional. Just based on the severity of it, a little bit about it. Lori Vallow Daybell, whatever she goes by, right? She is known as the Doomsday Mom for Idaho. She had 2 kids that are now deceased by, allegedly her hand or her husband's hand.
they were murdered either way.
Yeah, either way.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a lot. It's a take on religion. It's a take on, it was just crazy. And my accountant today will let you guys know that.
So they're from eastern Idaho, right? What county are we talking about?
Madison and Fremont.
Okay. So that's where they were living, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but the trial is being held in Ada County because obviously those rural counties in eastern Idaho can't really handle a trial of this magnitude. Yeah,
and it also pulls into that fact that the LDS Church, everything, that's 95% of that county out there. So because of the religion aspect, they had to move it to a bigger pool of people. And
just to be clear, they're not mainstream Mormons. They're one of the offshoots, right?
Yeah, they definitely tried to hide behind the mainstream LDS, but it didn't. It's not that so far, is what it's appearing.
So, from what I understand, and you know probably much more about this case than I do because I haven't followed it as well as you have, but the children go missing, and they're missing for a certain amount of time, right? Mm-hmm. And they can't explain where the children are for, it seemed like several months, right?
Yeah, and then they went off to Hawaii. Chad's wife, Tammy, which is also brought up today, she died right around the time that the kids were also missing. It was just all very random. Lori's ex-husband, Charles, died. So it's really about a lot of people who are dead that have ties to Lori and Chad. And, the children are probably the biggest significance because, it all started with where are the kids?
Right. That's kind of what unraveled the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's, obviously, if anyone doesn't know what's going on with this, there's thousands of articles online and videos, and so go watch this. Assuming most people know the basics of this case, Blair, tell us about today. Tell us about what happened at court.
So court started a little bit late. It was supposed to start at 8:30, but it really started at 9:15 because they had some security issues with the live streaming that they were doing to Madison and the overflow room for Ada County. So it started late. And then when we all walked in there, you see Lori Vallow. She's sitting there at the defense. I was sitting to the side behind her, so I could see her facial expression. And then I was also sitting on the road next to the family members and the victims. So I was next to Larry and Kay Woodcock. They're JJ's grandparents.
JJ's grandparents, yeah.
So,
Because and JJ and Tylee aren't full siblings, right?
No.
Okay. And see, this is really confusing to me. So
yeah. So Tylee is Lori Vallow's daughter from her other marriage, and then she has 2 kids, Colby and Tylee, and then she adopted JJ with her now deceased husband Charles Vallow, who is Kay's brother. So yeah,
it's all very confusing.
There's a lot of family. Yeah, so yeah.
Okay, so you're sitting behind Lori. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I keep seeing brought up is like how she's dressed and how her hair's done. Like,
it honestly, she just looked like a normal person, but her facial expressions, like, you can just tell that she's not all the way there. Like, she smirks. She's very. It's weird too, because like when someone's talking or like a witness is saying something or the prosecution's questioning, she's over here like directing her attorneys, and she's like, "Oh, do an overruled right here," to like trying to like give him advice. Which, I mean, she's very involved, so her competency obviously is intact. Like, which
is one of the reasons the trial
was delayed so many times.
Was delayed, yeah, because it was called in question.
Yeah, twice. So, I mean, she loves the attention. I locked eyes with her twice, and I mean, she just wanted that attention. So I was quick to break that. But she was looking around. She was trying to get kind of like a vibe from it was weird. And then when Tylee was brought up, she reacted she didn't react to Tylee. When JJ was brought up, like the autopsy photos or her being like this great mom or wanting to get rid of him and stuff, she had reactions to those, just like strong facial expressions.
So beside Lori, her attorneys, prosecuted, and all that, the courtroom was probably a lot of media and a couple onlookers. Is that kind of what I'm feeling?
It was probably like 20% media, and then the rest were onlookers. So, yeah, you had quite a few media when I arrived at 8 a.m. to go inside the courtroom. There was a lot of media that's like, "Oh, you got into the courthouse? Like, you're so lucky. I'm over in the overflow room." I'm like, "Oh, like, okay, sorry. Like, I'm not giving you my pass."
Right. Which you couldn't, like, because it's tied to your name, right?
Yeah, and they were very thorough with, they had a checklist, they had little admit ticket, like, they were very thorough in making sure you matched the name, and
Okay. Wow. So you get into the courtroom, sit down, there's that technical issue, and then the trial starts today. That's the very beginning of it. The jury was selected last week. So today was the opening statements, and the prosecution goes first because they have the burden of proof to prove their case against the defendant. So what do you remember from the prosecution's opening statement?
So the prosecution started off with, this is all about money, sex, and power for Chad and Lori Daybell. And I mean, it was just very much saying that Lori would do anything and everything to clear the obstacles that would keep her from her life with Chad. So she brought up how Tylee was getting money from her deceased father's account, like Social Security benefits, because, and then the prosecution was like, Lori wanted the money, Tylee was an obstacle, Tylee had the money, so Lori made Tylee disappear. And then same thing with JJ, because Charles died, so she was like, JJ had money from his deceased father because of Social Security, and JJ was in the way because he had autism, and he was hyperactive, and he's 7 years old, and was too much energy and too much of a nuisance, basically, for Lori's life with Chad. So JJ's now gone because Lori made that happen. So it was just very much painting the picture of Lori had this ideal life with Chad, and kids were not part of that ideal life. So, and it was just really sad. Like, the second you walked into that courtroom, it was just a very somber day. You didn't really know what we were going to get. So when all of a sudden the prosecution opened up with their opening statements, and then they had autopsy photos of Tammy laying on a table, and they had JJ wrapped in a plastic bag, and you could see like part of his skull, and then the duct tape, and then you saw Tylee, nothing of Tylee. Like, it was just burned, like, it just was nothing there. Like, there was no bone, nothing. It's just like some flesh, and then like just charred everything. So that was really, really hard. But JJ's was probably the hardest because they couldn't show any, like, they did this one thing where they said, here's like the arms of like the victims. Tylee had no arm because she was burned. JJ, they had his red jersey, and like the bag opened up, you saw his arm that was like decomposing, and then you saw the duct tape, like just the amount of duct tape all like around, and it wasn't just like one wrap, like it was significant wrapping of this duct tape to show like this kid, like this little 7-year-old was just bound, and like you couldn't do anything to help this kid.
It was obviously pretty traumatic just sitting in that courtroom seeing all this, right?
Yeah, it was pretty hard. And then for Tammy, they had her whole body, like...
Kaylee?
No.
Oh, Tammy.
Tammy Daybell.
Okay.
Yeah, they had her whole body, like her face on, I would guess it was a... What are those people called? Coroner's table? Like it was a metal table. She was on there in white, and her mouth was open, eyes closed. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Anything else about the prosecution's opening statements that you wanted to mention?
They just talked about like, so they showed the hands. Tylee didn't have any. JJ's were bound by the duct tape, and then Tammy's was limp, and they showed Lori and Chad their hands with their wedding bands on from when they got married in Hawaii, kind of just symbolizing like these hands from the kids and Tammy aren't ever going to be able to do anything else in life, but here are Lori and Chad Daybell holding hands and starting their new life together, like just sadistic type. Yeah,
that kind of juxtaposition of, these victims and the perpetrators.
Yeah.
Weren't they in Hawaii like at the same time we were?
They went in October, I believe.
Okay, so that's a few months after we were there.
Yeah.
So after the prosecution, then the defense has a chance to give their opening statement.
And I mean, it was, maybe I'm biased, I don't know. It was kind of disgusting to hear because Archibald was like, people love being around Lori. Lori has an infectious smile. Lori has a great personality. Lori is pretty. Lori is this amazing person that people just feel drawn to. And so that was like really hard to hear. After that, those images of these children that aren't here anymore. And just, it was weird too, because then he started talking about how he gets paid by the taxpayers, so he thanked us for paying our taxes.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then he was like, my job's really hard at being a public defender because I was bombed like 8 years ago for doing my job. Like he just kept taking a lot of turns that, didn't really go to the case. And then he said something like Lori, we'll show that Lori wasn't here because she has an alibi for the day that the children were murdered. She was in her apartment when the kids were in Alex's apartment getting killed. But that in itself has a loophole because the prosecution can't determine when the children were murdered.
Right.
So how can Lori say she was at the apartment when her kids were killed? Like, right there, you just kind of lost. But
yeah, even if she wasn't involved in it, or she at least knew what was happening.
Exactly.
What exactly is she charged with?
She has 4 charges right now. Or is it 5? It's murder or conspiracy to commit murder for Tylee and JJ, and I believe Tammy as well. And then fraud, because she took the money from Tylee and JJ. She was collecting the payments still when they were already deceased. So fraud for those. So 2 counts of fraud and like 3 for conspiracy. Murder. Yeah, murder 1.
Isn't there one that has to do with like her not reporting the children missing or something like that?
I didn't hear that today.
Okay.
So...
Because I think originally they had arrested her based on...
failure to notify.
Yeah. Of a death, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and also like failure to report a minor missing, things like that.
Yeah.
She had a lot, but that's not where it ended up. Like, the charges from what I heard today were way different from what she was previously.
Oh, yeah. And that happens quite a bit as investigations progress, so...
Yeah, and she still has charges pending in Arizona, too, for the murder of Charles.
Wow.
And possibly the attempted shooting of Brandon, who we heard about today as well.
Okay. So after the defense, then...
they called witnesses.
They called witnesses,
they called...
or just one?
So we had 3 witnesses. No, we had 2 witnesses for today. We almost got to a third, but then time ran out. We had Kay Woodcock that presented first, who was JJ's grandma, and then we had Brandon Bordeaux, who was married to Lori's niece Melanie, who was also part of this cult and tried to get him killed. So, yeah.
Anything significant that you remember from their testimonies?
Kay just talked about how she thought Lori was a great mom when she allowed Lori and Charles to adopt JJ from them, and how JJ was this great kid, obviously with special needs, so he needed some more attention, willing to do all that stuff until 2018, where she met Chad in 2018, and then she just had a complete switch, and Charles ended up getting killed. Kind of insinuated that Lori didn't want JJ anymore because she left for 58 days. I mean, it was really emotional. They showed a picture of JJ. They talked about the last time that Kay talked to JJ, their last FaceTime, how he was kind of like coerced on that last phone call. It only lasted 30 seconds. And just, I mean, you just saw the change, like, from how she described it from when Lori and Charles were together, and then the murder of Charles, and then Chad, all this stuff, like, with Chad and why JJ is now not here anymore. And then Brandon, I mean, his testimony, he was the one to identify the remains of JJ. So that was really hard listening to that. I mean, I'm pretty sure all of us cried in that courtroom hearing that.
But he wasn't involved in the murders or anything like that that we know of?
He was good friends with Charles. He had an attempt on his life.
Okay.
So he was shot at when he was getting divorced from Melanie, which is Lori's niece, who is very involved in the same cult type mindset as Lori. He talked about that shooting, that he nearly lost his life, and then he talked about identifying JJ, which was really hard for him.
Yeah.
And it was the day after his wedding, so June 12th, I believe, he went and, did that. And he did that because Larry was in poor health. Larry's such a great guy, too. I talked to Larry a little bit.
Did you?
Yeah, we shared an elevator during the lunch. And he's so humble and, like, he's in so much emotional pain, him and Kay. Like, you can just see. And just how he talks, though. And he has no ill will towards Lori or anything. Like, there's no... he just wants the honest truth, like they all do. But it's just so calm, and just... he lets things play out. Like, there's no revenge type mindset for him or Kay. So that's kind of, it just says a lot.
Yeah.
So
interesting. All right. Anything else you want to add?
I don't think so. Nothing that's appropriate for this, at least.
Well, so from here on, then prosecution will finish calling all their witnesses. The defense will cross-examine. The defense will call witnesses. Prosecution will cross-examine. Both sides will present evidence, and then closing statements, and then that's it. Now they're expecting the trial to last at least a month, correct?
Yeah, and I mean, Chad's lawyer is showing up too, so I don't know how that's going to affect Chad in the future. Like, it's just, there's a lot there. And
right.
What else? There's an investigator there. This private investigator that's working for the defense. He's sitting there, a little awkward, but
Yeah. And Chad, is his trial scheduled or not yet?
No, I think they're waiting to see how Lori's plays out.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, I don't, at this rate, obviously I know nothing, but based on prior being there and everything, I really think either Chad's gonna make a plea deal or something. Like, I don't think his trial's gonna play out.
Right. So just based on how the attorneys did today, how would you vote if you were on that jury?
Probably, just based on how it's going, it's really hard because right now it's all circumstantial. Like, there's no actual hard evidence that I've seen today. Like, obviously, someone murdered those kids. I don't think Lori physically did it. I don't think she's capable of doing that. I know, based on how everything played out, Alex is the fall guy, which is her brother. He's the one that killed Tylee and JJ, but I don't know. It's really hard, and I really hate saying that, but there needs to be more hard evidence to put Lori there. Like, I could actually see it being that Chad and Alex did it, and Lori is just so mentally gone. I've only been there one day.
And that's the hard thing, because the prosecution has to prove that case beyond a reasonable doubt to that jury. So if there's anything there that might show that Lori didn't actually commit the crimes, then they can vote to acquit. And, that would be I don't know.
Right. And, I mean, the only thing that I know for sure after today is that she is guilty of committing the fraud.
Okay.
The murder is a very different...
Yeah.
Yeah, that one, I mean, they were about to call the detective who found the children's bodies before the day ended, but it was going to take too long, so that's for tomorrow, which I won't be there for.
Sad.
I know.
But you will try to go again next week, right?
I will attempt whenever you let me.
It's not really a letting thing. It's a life thing. But, okay, well... I guess with that, we'll go and sign off. Thank you for talking to me tonight, Blair. Mm-hmm. You're welcome for dinner.
Thanks. I'll see you later.
I will see you on the other side of the store. All right. All right, to our listeners, thank you for listening. Yeah, like I said, this is just a little bonus episode, little documenting I guess you could almost call this, Blair, trial of the decade. I think Kohlberger's going to be the trial of the century when that comes up.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell are the trial of the century, and Kohlberger's just going to be a decade.
Okay.
I think, switch it, because Duncan
Alright.
was a child of the decade for sure.
Yeah.
Shasta Groney, everything like that. That's a decade one.
I guess with the Vallow Daybill case, it's more than just the kids, so it's a lot more. Yeah, so I guess you're right.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're kind of in religion here, and cult. And,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Well, all right. I guess we'll say goodbye.
Bye.
If you want to get a hold of us, send an email to info@idahistory.com. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Ida History. You can visit us on the web at idahistory.com. Ida History would like to thank our listeners, sponsors, and contributors. If you want to know how you can become a contributor, go to idahistory.com/podcast. Please consider giving us a rating and review on your podcast app. I'm Tom Hart, and this is Devil's County.